Alright, man. So today we are going to get into the shoes of one of the most iconic characters from Indian cinema, Charulata, played by Madhabi Mukherjee. And the legends that have gone into making this film, right? Like it's written in the story which it is based on is written by Rabindranath Tagore. And then it is written, directed, sort of the camera work, the set design, and like music and everything is done by like the true author Satyajit Ray.
He's just not acting in it. Otherwise, he's there everywhere.
He's there. And like this, it almost makes me want to believe in afterlife a little bit because there is a part of me which wishes that in heaven somewhere, like Ray and Rabindranath Tagore and Soumitra Chatterjee are sitting together and listening to this podcast some point of time.
You think they're listening? You think they're listening?
Or hell for them.
I think I was not stressed before, but now you're like Satyajit Ray might listen to
for
this.
them. Yeah. So, yes, man. So, let's talk about Charulata. Like, from the beginning that we see her. The first shot that we see of her is like where the movie starts is where she is doing a little bit of embroidery, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to one of my, Instagram friends, Anuradha Bhaumik, who goes by the name Hoopla Bag Girl. She promotes and she is a very fierce embroidery artist and like she does some incredible work. And when I saw that, I actually thought about her in this film. But yeah, coming back to Charulata, she is she like there's so much of her love language is clear through the film, right? Like she's doing embroidery, she's making slippers.
She likes making things for people. Like she'd be a great gift giver.
Yeah.
Like if your birthday was coming up, it'd be great to have Charulata as your friend because like she would come up with something very personal.
Very personalized.
You know? And you'd be like, I got a gift voucher. Like I just got 100, here's 100 rupees. But she'd be like, hey, I stitched this cloth for you and it's in the exact design of your childhood, your favorite flower from your childhood, and here it is. I feel like that's her way of expressing love. Something personal between her and the person that she loves. She comes up with something.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the handkerchief that she's kind of embroidering on, which she's writing the letter B on, you come to realize that it is her husband's name.
Yeah.
And so one of the extension of the title of this film is the Charulata, the lonely wife. And it's such a kind of an oxymoron kind of a title because marriage is supposed to fix your problem of loneliness, right? Like you meet the companion and like kind of it takes care of your loneliness, or at least that is how people think about it. But in case of Charulata, the moment she makes this and she goes to hand out this handkerchief or gift it to her husband, the first question he asks her is, hey Charulata, when did you get so much of time?
This is when you do something nice for your parents or your friends.
Yeah.
And they're like, tere paas to time hi hai na, aise kar raha hai. It's like, what? I was like, she made the effort, at least acknowledge it. But I think sometimes when you're insecure about your own stuff, like you want to project, like I know that when I'm at a low point, like work-wise, I feel like I'm not being productive. When someone's doing something that's creative or fun, sometimes I look at it from the gaze of, iske paas to, you try to come up with the reason why they're able to do it and you're not.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of jealousy, I feel.
Yeah.
He's like, acha, you have to, if I had time, even I would have made it.
Yes, and it is also the indication of how much he's not seeing her also, no? Like this question of, hey Charulata, when did you find the time? Right? Like you see that she is in the house, like there's so many moments where she's all by herself. Like the biggest task which she has is of telling the servant at 4 o'clock go and give the tea. She's not even like going and giving the tea or making the tea by herself and all that. She's pretty much confined to her space. Like which is such like in the opening shots of the film, you come across this big bungalow, right? Which is like this decorative walls are there from this 1880s Bengal, like the Bengal rich kind of a family. You see the empty chairs, the empty household, and within that you see Charulata placed where she's like kind of looking at the world outside through it. So you can see how much of time she has at hand and all that. But when her husband says, when did you have time for it? It is the first moment where we also see that how much he's not seeing her for who she is and all that.
I felt that was very meta, like the whole, where she's observing. It's almost like she gets thrown into the plot. Like first she's just watching the plot. She's like, main picture dekh rahi hu with you. Yeah. So I'm watching this happen. That person's going by. I'm also watching it.
Yeah.
And it feels like at some point, the storm that comes in or whatever is like, acha, now it's your cue.
Your cue to
come into the story.
Yeah.
I felt like it activated her.
Yeah.
And there's like little hints of it, no? Ki there's that tune that plays every time she's about to do something creative. There's like that very beautiful
motif
tune.
Which plays.
And it's always like, it's almost like a call to like, just come with us. It'll be better on this side. Yes. That type of thing.
The image of Charulata looking at through those opera glasses is such an iconic image again in Indian cinema of like, sort of women looking through the window or the world outside. And instantly in this character also you pointed out of how much passive an audience that she is into her own life. Like, she's watching, the reason why she's looking at the world outside is because like she's getting some joy out of it from looking at the world. And but then that is her contrast also, that she's looking at the world, but is the world looking at her? Because like when she's like through the opera glasses, like one of the beautiful scenes is in the opening itself. After she is done looking at the people from the outside, she comes back into the veranda, and where she's watching her husband, like who's holding a book or like a newspaper as he's walking by. He doesn't even notice her as he's walking away, and then she looks at him through the opera glasses and sees him going away. So
he's also like something she doesn't know.
Yeah, he's also somewhere like almost equivalent to the guy on the street who's there. So
I was just thinking, isn't it like her journey from where she is to what she becomes?
Yeah,
it's almost like when we see like a film, or we see an actor.
Yeah,
and we're like, oh, I wish I could also be like that.
Yeah,
and then you kind of start your journey. Like if this happened in modern day, I think Charulata would have really thrived, because it's like everyone's a creator.
Yeah.
Everyone gets to. This is like Charulata was the first influencer, is what I'm saying. Like she had that moment, right, where it's like now anyone can kind of become a creator because it's so accessible. There's a platform.
Yeah.
But back then, like with each passing year, it got easier. But back then, it was like you have to become a star. And to become, it takes that much effort. And for Charulata, it is like literally like, okay, are you going to write for the first time and get your stuff out there?
Yeah.
Now it's like anyone can. If Charulata was there now, she'd be like, hi, I'm on my phone, I'm recording myself. 90 second, I made a reel also.
I can't stop thinking about Charulata spending her day making reels about like her house and all
she
that.
Would for sure be making reels right now.
Yeah. In fact, there is this account called as Messy Chick. On Instagram, which I love watching, being a voyeur to. Like what she also does is from her window she records the people walking on the streets of Paris, and she's like, in today's fashion in Paris, she will watch the entire person walk down the street and follow them and all that, and it becomes very interesting as a window into that person's world.
Charulata would have a vlog, and it would be called My Binoculars or My Window, and you see daily just like a montage of people that go through the day. She would make one.
And that is where the idea of the female gaze also, like, so there is a beautiful quote by this filmmaker Agnes Varda where she talks about that the first feminist gesture is to say that, hey, I am looking at the world, that the world is not defined by how the world sees me, but by how I see it. That I am also determining it and all of that. So Charulata's story is a lot of that, like, of looking at the world from a distance, be it so. But there is also the contrasting or the opposite or the sort of the missing out part of that is that she is not being seen for who she is. And that is where her loneliness kind of comes from. Yeah. Like there is this a beautiful advice column that I read, which is called as Dear Jasmine, which comes from the Alipuri Post by Rohini Kejriwal. And in that sheet once talked about the idea of all human beings want three things, right? They want to be seen for who they are. Like, look at me, like, observe me for who I am and all that. Then they want someone or some place to belong to, right? Like we all have, like, we want a sense of belonging out of people. And then third thing is we want affirmation. Hey, tell me whatever I'm doing it right. Right? So she talks about the idea of being seen, such a fundamental thing in human beings' life. Like we all long for people to kind of, watch us, like, sort of see us at our truest and all that.
What I also realized when you're saying that, like if you look at how Bhupati interacts with Charulata, he gets all those things from her.
Yeah.
He's seen by her.
Yeah.
Right? He gets a sense of belonging because he feels that comfort from her.
Yeah.
And he gets the affirmation when he asks, like, am I just lazy? Am I good for nothing?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you're great.
Yeah.
But he's never said that to Charulata.
Yeah.
So he gets all of those things, which is very much the relationship between a man and a woman at that time.
Yeah.
Or even now.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like, you'll get the affirmation and the comfort from a woman, but you won't offer it up yourself.
Yeah.
This is a very common thing. And I felt that throughout the movie. Like, multiple men in this movie ask for comfort from women and ask for affirmation.
Yeah.
but they never give it to the woman at all.
And it is so contrasting with Bhupati's character because he's like asking for it, right? Like he's asking for the affirmation. He's being vulnerable with her. But when it's come to his personal choices of reading and what he's going to read and the kind of press that he's going to have, it's all about the noble causes, right? He's talking about politics and he's talking about the greater cause and all that. And he's talking about poetry or plays and, you know, novels and all of that. He's talking about that as almost as an inferior art, which he does not want to engage into.
Yeah.
Like the 2 novels which he talks about, like these are not found in my library. My library will be filled with like the books on politics and like all the higher order things in the world, which from his
Which is the
worldview.
thing when we were kids, like, you know, if you're a man, you can't listen to this type of music.
Yeah.
And you can't, like, I had Taylor Swift on my iPod.
Yeah.
And I remember I told someone, oh, it's my cousin's. She added it to this. And I was listening to it like every day.
Yeah.
So you don't want people to know also. Like sometimes I wonder if Bhupati is actually reading those books and just not telling anyone. Like he's read all this, he knows. But as soon as someone mentions, he's like, nahi, maine to kabhi nahi read, mera nahi hai.
This is not me.
Yeah.
We all have shied away from sharing our Spotify Wrapped when it comes out.
I fully shared.
Yeah.
I fully shared. Only Bollywood songs are on mine.
Yeah, but then in Bhupati's lines also this part comes across. Like, you know, the point when she's coming to give him the handkerchief.
Yeah.
And before that, Bhupati is preparing for a speech. And he's talking about the line of how intellectual superiority is not what makes a nation great. How it is not always about intellectual eminence. But he's talking about the patriotism, energy and all that. But what I also took away from that line is the idea of emotional intelligence. Right? Emotional subjectivity. Like, lot of times, you know, in for the last few years and all that, or like in the evolution of modern history, we have let our world be defined by intellectual like systems, right? In terms of, oh, this is better because it is more intellectual, right? In that we have, you know, discounted this emotional subjectivity of people. I mean, we have talked about this idea a lot of times, right? In terms of what is called as mass cinema in today's time. And then the moment they say, oh, ये थोड़ा सा intellectual हो गया, ये थोड़ा सा mass को पसंद नहीं आएगा. But we have talked about the idea of like in doing that, what are they doing is they are discounting the emotional subjectivity of people.
Correct.
And they are confusing the intellectual with the emotional intelligence. And that is why they are thinking, oh, this is not going to be understood by people in...
you're being condescending to the audience. You're saying like, oh, you won't get it.
You won't get it.
But,
and this is what, you know, sort of like Bhupati's worldview also is in terms of Charulata.
But also I think men tend to value that. Like I've noticed this as a thing, like intellectual superiority is like the most coveted thing. Like it's like, oh yeah, I am smarter than the rest. You know, like even in, this is relevant now, but like with Kabir Singh and with Animal and the men in those films, their main signifier is that they're the smartest in the room.
Yeah.
Not the kindest, not the most empathetic, not the most understanding. But the thing that makes them a hero is that in any room, they're the smartest person. And that alienates people.
It does. So one of my favorite moments of that is like in Walter Mitty towards the end. Like, you know, when he comes, the upper management comes into the job and they have to hire a bunch of traditional photographers and all that because they are getting better systems in place, like investments in place. He's this character like who's talking to Walter. He says, man, we have got to do it. That's what the time calls for. And, you know, it has to be done. And Walter says to him, yeah, you have to do it, but you don't have to be an asshole about it. And it struck me about this whole idea of negating like in case of this film also, like this Bhupati's idea of greater virtues and like, you know, the greater order of the world, the politics and all that. We can almost talk about like the idea of how this is creating the distance, his fallacy of being too virtuous is creating the loneliness for the people in his life, his immediate partner.
He's not telling her, so he has that scene where he tells Charulata, like, I'll tell you about business and politics. Like, I'm not going to tell you now, you're not smart enough. He's basically being condescending to Charulata.
Yes.
Saying like, you don't understand business and politics. I'll tell it to you someday because I'm the smarter person. But it's like, you're talking about the freedom of the country, but you're not talking about the freedom of your own wife in the household.
Yeah.
Like you're not attending to her at all, but you're like, by the way, the country is really going through problems. I'm like, what about your wife who you don't know how she spends her day also?
The fallacy of being too virtuous, which is so evident for Bhupati. Like, you know, once again a Ted Lasso reference, you told me about how Ted being too, you know, this optimistic and this too virtuous person creates the, you know, sort of problems in the life of other people. So in the case of Bhupati also, it is that, like, while he's focused on the greater ideas of the world, the politics and the idea of self-determination for India, self-determination for India. Like he's kind of missing out on acknowledging his partner, and like that is creating the loneliness for Charulata, right?
It's that Newton thing also, that virtuous thing.
Yeah.
Where he's like, am I wrong because I want to be good? It's like, no, because you're too proud that you're good.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That you want to bring it up and rub it in people's faces that, look, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, you get like I don't want to use the wrong word for this.
Yeah, because he's trying to make a statement. Like, he's like, look, the British call the Bengali rich the idle rich. Right? Yeah. And he says, I don't want to be called that. I want to do something. And yeah, that is, and the politics of this movie then in that case is like, while India was under the British rule at that point of time, and there were talks about India's self-determination, right? Like trying to be governed by like Indians or getting representation, which he talks about. Like there is no representation for Indians in the British Parliament, right? And
it was interesting that, right? Like where they're treating and we spoke about this, like them treating the British government as their own government.
Yeah.
You know, like because like every other historical film, we're always fighting against the British.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to take them down, you know. Yeah. But in this film, it's very much like, no, but this is a reality for them now. It's 1890 or like the late 1880s. So now it's like, they're in here.
Yeah.
And they're talking about problems as if it's, you know, as if it's today's government or something like that. You know, like the way they're talking about it is very like, this is the problems. These are the good things, whatever. So that was interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Like this is a very much an India that's accepted that this is their government.
Yeah. And that's what, like his idea of like reading all of this, like creating the paper and all of that is thinking like you're coming from this idea of intellectual superiority also, like of being a learned man, which made me think of this Kabir Doha, which was something like Pothi pad pad jagmua pandit bhayo na koe, dhai aakhar prem ke pade to pandit hoye. Like, you know, which talks about the idea of, you know, like be attentive, like look at the people you love, try to understand that space. You know, it made like, which also in Goodwill Hunting he tells you, right? Like you can read 1,000 books, you know, you can, you know, sort of watch, like look at paintings from all over the world and gain your intellectual knowledge from it. Yeah. But you will never know what it means to hold the hand of your partner while she's on her, you know, illness bed or something like that. Yeah. So which is very beautiful.
He talks about going to he's like, you don't know what paintings will be like till you go to the Sistine Chapel. I'm like, tickets expensive, yaar. Matlab, not everyone. He's a kid from Boston, bro. Like, what are we talking about? But like that's the point. Like until you experience it, you can intellectualize it, again, the word. But unless you actually feel it, it's not the same. I have a question for you. Bhupati has a newspaper. This man reads, he is in charge of publishing whatever articles are written. Yeah. He knows his wife writes. Yeah. What's up? No, why is he not helping her?
Even that is mentioned. Like, in fact, in the ending of the film, that resolution comes across when this is, you know, you talk about the politics part, I will talk about the lifestyle or like the literature part of it.
Correct.
Like, because in the initial like times of when his paper is being published, it is chiefly supposed to be about like his editorial is also about the government and the critique of the government and all that. Like, you know, when his brother-in-law goes to get advertisers, and the advertisers are like, you know, you are mainly a political paper. You are not being consumed by, you know, people. Like there is no gossip column or something like that. So it almost talks about the space of a platform, which is like too idealistic and which is saying to, like we are going to be that. And then we are not going to cater to the needs of the people.
It just, nothing changes, right?
Like, we talked about the idea of pandering in the last episode only. And like, he's not willing to, Bhupati is very sure, I am not going to pander. I am going to tell the truth. His motto of his newspaper is also that, truth prevails or something like that, right? So
he doesn't think that Charulata would be skilled enough to put something together for this. Like he thinks her writing is something else.
Yes. In fact, that point of time, he doesn't even know. Like he knows that she's able to write, but he talks to Amal about it, right? Like he says, you go and teach her. Yeah. So you see that like, it's not one tone. Like Bhupati is aware about it. Like he's aware about the loneliness of his wife. He's trying to kind of understand it and do on it his best that he can. But because of this lifestyle that he has got used to, or like that his mission that he has committed to, like this is the, you know, sort of thing which is faltering.
But
like,
do you think it's kind of the in theory knowing? Like a lot of times, like nowadays, we use terms that we don't actually fully understand. Yeah. Like I'll say gaslighting. Yeah. Or I'll say like a word which makes me sound smart without actually understanding the implications of it. Like in practice with a person, what does that feel like? Yeah. So he's telling Charulata, oh, you must be lonely because he's read books on it. He's read what it would be like for a woman of this economic strata to feel this loneliness. He knows.
Yeah.
He's read Desperately Seeking Shahrukh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, that is beautiful because what is not kind of put out in this movie explicitly is the politics of that time. Like the Rajaram Mohan Roy, which he looks up to. That point of time, Bengal was talking about the liberation of women from that perspective.
Yeah.
Right? The whole idea of traditional women versus a modern woman. In this is about, like, Bengal was about like getting over child marriage, getting into widow remarriage. So all of these acts Rajaram Mohan Roy was kind of bringing about. Right, which like, you can correct me if my history is wrong about that, but like in that, the progressive men of Bengal were trying to do that. It is almost that like, it is my job now to fix this problem in the society. Like, so if I am going to marry, I'm going to make sure my wife is educated and my wife is kind of brought up to speed, because I want to empower her. But like, still there is little bit of patriarchy over there as well, right? Yeah.
What do you think Charulata's politics are? Like, where do you think she stands on? Not anything, but how does she feel about? I feel like she is informed because she's living the life that's direct consequence of the politics, right?
Yeah.
So assuming that Charulata doesn't know anything about politics is kind of a hilarious idea to me, because it's like, the consequences she's facing directly, no?
Yeah.
Like, her marriage was probably early when she was younger. Her life was catered around men, and all of these things are politics.
Yeah.
So she's already there.
Yeah.
So for him to say, you won't get it, I'm living it, dude.
Yeah. Which makes me think of this Bhumi Pednekar line from what is the Sushant Singh Rajput movie?
Which one?
Like which one is that? Which is in the desert, where the iconic line from Bhumi Pednekar, which is like, she's also a bandit in that movie.
Yeah. So Sonchadiya.
Sonchadiya.
Yeah.
So Bhumi Pednekar's line is, औरत की कोई जात नहीं होती. Like, we like, men have classes between them.
Yeah.
Women are just this. Which is in this movie also, where even a character like Amal, when he talks about, like, he says that like a traditional woman is no better than an animal, because she just go through her life, sort of, and all that without thinking about it.
That traditional woman thing I found very interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's an idea of Charulata, at least from Amal's perspective, we've not got him yet, but from his perspective, that Charulata is not a traditional woman.
Yeah.
So I felt like this is the first not like other girls conversation where he's like, you're traditional, Charulata is a new woman, because he also calls her a new woman.
Yeah.
So I was like, even in this place where they're talking about liberation of women, they're still saying that if you're a traditional woman, then you're no better than an animal.
Yeah.
So even in this place where they're fighting for women, they're like, no, but we want you to be this way. If you're just sitting around reading novels, which men do all the time, then I'm sorry.
But bro, now that I think about it, I find the question of politics for Charulata very interesting. What is her politics you're talking about, right? Because then if you look at her husband, his husband is more concerned about who's winning, whether it is the Tories or the Liberals, right? To Liberals.
The Liberals.
Yeah. He's more invested into that. He's more invested into the politics of power. Charulata's politics is the politics of being. Of like how her life unfolds and all of that. When we were talking about it like off camera before this episode rolled on, we were talking about that Nagaraj Manjule interview, right, in Film Companion, where he talks about for him, or like his mother narrated the story, that the government which was changing at the center didn't matter to them much.
Didn't matter.
Because for them it was almost like they're always in jail.
The jailer is changing.
So for Charulata, the politics is not the politics of power which she's invested in. I think it's more of a politics of being, of what her life is and how her life is unfolding. And her immediate problem is that she is not seen, right? There is a lack of, which again explicitly not stated in the movie, but there is an age gap between Bhupati and Charulata. So you can think of that particular point of time, maybe Charulata was married too early. Where he was quite aged in comparison to her, and that might have also created a distance between the two of them. And now you see, as the movie is unfolding, there is a lot of sexual repression. There is lack of clear emotional, physical intimacy in the life of Charulata, which comes across then the inciting incident, which in the idea of loneliness of Charulata, the lack of emotional intimacy, the lack of the sexual repression in her life. The inciting incident is the storm coming, right? Which Amal kind of announces himself. And
I love that this was the most Bollywood thing about it. This was his Shah Rukh Khan entry, no?
Yeah.
He came in, there was a storm happening.
Yeah.
He walked in, she was there with a thali.
Yes.
It's a different movie.
And there is such a nod to Bankim, the writer Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay also.
Yeah.
Because the lines which he is reciting when he's coming is from Bankim. So across the movie, because it is again Tagore during his time used to read Bankim a lot. And like it kind of flows from there, the idea of like what he's announcing and all that. But yes, what he brings back into the life of Charulata is the moment Amal comes, right? And he talks to his brother, right?
Yeah.
His brother says, oh, what are you going to do? He says, relaxation
Vishram.
and more relaxation. Vishram. Like, oh, career. I don't know about a career. I am going to relax.
Yeah.
Which is again such a political idea. Again, the politics of women, right? Shout out to this, one of my favorite Instagram pages. It's called as Women at Leisure. I'm forgetting the name of the founder of the page. But the idea of that page is like, if you look at our mothers, they were so engrossed in the mundane activities of their life, of taking care of the house, of taking care of the children, of taking care of the partner and all that, that they did not find moments of leisure enough for them, right? So for women, the finding a moment of leisure is almost an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
Like, getting together, having a kitty party, or like going to, like, say, the beach together, going to picnics together. That even taking that moment, like, in the iconic film Juice, Shefali Shah sits in front
just sits
in front of the
cooler. Yeah.
That's like, that is a woman at leisure.
Yeah.
And so Amal, when he talked about that relaxation, I knew instantly that he's going to bring that sort of into, because of that leisure is going to provide him the opportunity to see Charulata truly. And that is where the whole thing comes from.
Yeah. I thinking about like women at leisure, like the idea is like people from our mother's generation.
Yeah.
There's that thing of a morning walk.
Yeah.
It's always a classic, like they go on these groups of morning walks.
Yeah.
And I realized, because it's like you're combining two things. You're doing an activity, so it doesn't feel like you're chilling.
Yeah.
But really you're there, gathered there to like talk to your friends.
Yeah.
And I think we're all kind of doing that in some way. But I'm like, that must have been for them a moment to just be surrounded by people where their conversation mattered.
Yeah.
What things they contributed.
Yeah.
The things that we term as gossip.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, right? Like when we look at women, we're always like, there's that trope of like, they just gossip. They're just a gossip. What is gossip? Like, it's just understanding the human condition. We're trying to figure out, uske saath aisa hua. You're trying to learn about people.
Yeah.
We term it as gossip. We try to like
there's a lot of condescension and patronization in that.
But we're all gossiping all the time.
Yeah. The reason why also the morning walk thing happens also because they want to be ready before the entire house starts working.
So they're
getting their moment, like they have to wake up early, take bath or whatever before everyone else. Have to start providing for everyone. I'll have this 2 hours just to myself. Therefore, it is almost like across so many films, there are so many moments like this where there are moments, women are having their own moment by themselves, which is a very deeply political thing in our times, and which for Charulata also kind of, tries to showcase, which Amal brings into her life. The idea of kind of being, finding that moment. And because her husband's idea, like you see the plot of the movie is moving forward because of the loneliness of Charulata. The Bhupati's idea of fixing the loneliness of Charulata is like, let me call your brother. He'll come with his wife and his wife will be a good companion.
Especially
for
the come with the wife. He's like, 2 women must mean they'll get along.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then the next shot they cut to is them playing cards on the bed.
Yeah.
And you see how like
she's yawning.
Yeah, she's yawning. Manda is no match for Charulata's intellect and like kind of her drive and all of that. And that's why Charulata is also like, she's again lonely in the company of her. And when then Amal comes into her life and like then the suggestion over there which Bhupati again makes to Amal is like, why don't you teach her to like, why don't you bring out the writer in her? And then I find this so beautiful in the movie that he is the one who's trying to bring out the writer in her and she is the one who's trying to get him married. Like, trying to talk to him about like, now you are like done of your own college and you have to get married and all that. So it's like 2 pillars of civilization, like, expression and companionship, right? Like I'm going to get you to companionship and I'm going to get you to expressing yourself to the fullest. And I found it hilarious.
I have something about that. I think we can get into later when we talk about their relationship.
Yeah.
But the thing about her saying that I want to get you married, how genuine that is,
yes,
I'm not too sold on.
It is.
Initially, it's genuine.
Yeah.
But I think that changes because she mentions it multiple times.
Yeah. There is a little bit of Oedipus complex over there because Charulata is almost like also a mother figure to, Amal.
That line is definitely crossed. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in Hamlet territory a little bit.
Because she is like, taking care, like he's coming from the hostel, right? And she's like, oh, you're not in hostel anymore. Yeah. Give me your shirts, give me your dirty laundry. Like, I'll take care of it. Like,
that's when I realized, so like the benefit of this film not having too much, like, there's no scandalous thing happening in the film. Really.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I was watching it where she asked him to take his shirt off.
Yeah.
And I felt...
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is very intimate. And then he's wearing a shirt underneath.
Yeah.
So but in my head, I was like, because there was such a languid and nothing happening vibe to the film, suddenly when she's like, take your shirt off in front of me because your thing is torn, it felt intimate. Like you shouldn't have been there.
The acting in that scene is so brilliant. Props to Soumitra Chatterjee, who's so tender in that moment. Because when she asks of him, he also like raises his spine, right? Like, what have you asked from me? I have to remove my shirt. Whoa. It's almost reminds me of that Swades scene where she fixes the dhoti for him. Like, almost coming, like, exploring intimacy in that, where it doesn't have to be like, again, this talks of the female gaze, right? The major conflict debate about that is the male gaze in cinema, in popular cinema, has always been about objectification. And in that process, it has been missing out on the tenderness and the humanity of people. Like how awkward and odd Amal feels when that is so beautifully done in this film. It's very lovable.
But so they bond over this writing exercise, right? Because like that's what Bhupati's told him to do.
Yeah.
Why do you think she falls in love?
Yes. So let's get into the idea of the intimacy in the life of Charulata, right? And the role the opera glasses play in showing us that, right? In the beginning, the opera glasses are associated with her when she is looking at the world.
Correct.
Right? The first time, also the idea of the house, how, she is like, there is a cage, the bird in the cage in the movie, which is a motif. Yeah. She's also pretty much like that. She's in a beautiful cage. The movie towards the end, you see the Tagore story's title was The Broken Nest.
Correct.
Right? But the bird is not in a nest. It's in a cage. Similarly, Charulata is also in a beautiful cage of this beautiful household. But she is, and the first time the movie moves away from the house is in the garden scene, which is has to be in the history of Indian cinema, one of the most beautiful moments of filmmaking, acting, writing, everything, the synergy of it all coming together, right? The garden scene is the first time when they're moving away from the house, and you see that we have discussed about the line of when she's getting on the swing. She's saying, Amal Babu, why don't you come and give me one push?
Yeah.
I just need one push. After this, I can manage by myself.
Correct.
It's such a meta line or whatever, the layered line for...
Like a woman just needing a little bit because, everything's stacked against her.
Yeah.
She needs a little bit of a push, a little bit of help.
Yeah.
And then she'll be fine. There's a shot of her then kicking the swing on her own.
Yes. Then she kicking and there's that iconic shot from...
I mean, that shot is,
yes.
People have replicated that shot across countries. That shot of her on the swing with her point of view.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think that's like a filmmaking masterclass moment. So.
There is a brilliant fourth wall breaking in that as well. And it's also from the perspective of, it's not just, filmmaking, filmmaking master just for the sake of it, trying to show off. He's also getting you closer to the internal world of Charulata.
Yeah.
Because that is when the opera glasses, which we were talking about, now she's looking at Amal. First, she's looking at a woman and a child at a distance, right? Which talks about the lack of child in her life. And then she is shifting her gaze to Amal. And now from this opera glasses, we see Amal more intimately. Rather than all the other people that she saw, we look at all the other people from a distance.
Yeah.
But Amal we are looking at intimately. And we are seeing that, this is the first time she's also looking at him like that.
I think they choose that song also because of that, like the song about the koyal.
Phool, phool, bhavra dole, or something. Yeah.
So it's a beautiful song. It's also in Parinita.
It's also in Parinita.
So, she's singing that song and she's talking about this koyal that's going from place to place.
Yeah.
Looking for something.
Yeah.
And inside her, there's a yearning.
Yeah.
A yearning that can't seem to be filled. The void that's not filled.
Yeah.
And after she finishes singing that song, she looks at Amal through the binoculars and it's almost like she's found it.
Yep.
That's why the song right before, that's why that shot of her on the swing.
It is beautiful. And then Amal is talking about how this garden will be a beautiful place for me to kind of write and let my imagination flow.
A bridge. He wants a bridge.
Yes. And the immediate action of Charulata is let me go and make a register for you.
Yeah.
I want to, you want this moment of writing and all that. I want to create the thing for it, like the register in which you will write.
Yeah.
And Amal starts writing to it.
এই দুয়ার আর এই কলম
So there is this beautiful moment in the film which comes about she makes the register and she says, whatever you write in the register,
you can't write.
Just keep it to yourself. Like it is between us. You can't publish it. And when I watched it, like this time also, I was wondering why is that the case? What do you think?
I think it's like you create a safe space almost. They created their own bubble. It's like that rock star thing with Ranbir Kapoor and
ये हमारी दुनिया है.
ये हमारी दुनिया है. इसमें कोई नहीं आ सकता. Whatever, you know, the place beyond. And actually, Imtiaz Ali spoke about, like, I think Anupama Chopra in Film Companion, she was asking him, like, why is it always the mountains with you?
Yeah.
Why do they always go to the mountains, and why is that the safe space?
Yeah.
And it's like wherever you find serenity.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He said, wherever you find serenity, that for me, it's the mountains.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to find other places as well. Yeah. And I feel like in this film, for them, it's the garden and that register and that moment.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't leave that. That's what Charulata feels. That's why she says, don't share this with anyone because this is just for us.
Yeah.
This is sacred.
Yeah.
You know? And then she says, don't publish it.
Yes. And it is demanding exclusivity from him. Like, because he's bearing out his art, right?
Yeah.
He's like, again, going, what is art? Like, art is like us pouring our heart out into something and telling, hey, world, look at this.
Yeah.
Like, this is also a part of me. Like, she's saying, no, the world doesn't get this part of you. Only I get it. Like, I have the authority over this.
I just realized this is also like the Radhika Apte, like in Lust Stories.
Yeah.
Radhika Apte, where she's playing someone that's polyamorous and is dating multiple people, and she's married, and she starts dating this boy, right, in college. And she tells him, they have this thing where she notices in his house that he plays the Raj Kapoor songs.
Yeah.
And their first night together, he plays it.
Yeah.
And she is like, her question to him when she thinks he's cheating is, do you play the Raj Kapoor songs for anyone else?
Yeah.
So a married woman asking for exclusivity in that moment, which is very much like what Charulata is doing. Like, no, this is for us.
Yeah.
I know I'm married. I know I have my own thing. I know I have my own love language with him. But with you, don't share this.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Which is quite beautiful. We'll come back to that moment. But let's talk about the idea of the Amal also wanting Charulata to write. And what is that? Right? Like, it is about if she's lonely and if she's also like into expressing herself through her writing and all that. Her writing will be her way of being seen. Like, you know, like, okay, like opening up to the world a little bit. And that is what I think in the movie very subtly, that is the role art also plays in our life, right? Like, I believe every one of us has one or the other medium that we are expressive through, or through which we can arrive at our fullest expression. You know, it's just about understanding and identifying which is that moment. For Charulata, it is that. And Amal's job is like, you know, kind of to bring up to the writer within her to the forefront and all that. And I think in the movie, that is what, you know, it is trying to tell us also about Charulata.
I realize he starts doing it as duty.
Yes.
So when he starts doing it, it's duty for his brother. Yeah. Because his brother said he needs to do this.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, that's what I will do then.
Yeah.
But then obviously it becomes more.
Yes. And that is where the intimacy also comes in, right? Because in the same interview which you're talking about Imtiaz Ali, Anupama Chopra, in that he says, what is true love? He says, when you are in true love, you feel like the person is, you know, bringing you closer to yourself, right? He's saying like the person makes you feel more authentic. Right. There is also a beautiful James Baldwin quote about like love is nothing but mirroring each other's like magnifying each other's light, right? Like kind of making themselves feel at their fullest, right? Correct. And that is what Amal is bringing into the life of Charulata. That is why she is intensely falling in love with him, because he's making her feel seen. He's making her feel her truest self also through all these things which Amal has kind of brought into the life of Charulata. And then that iconic moment of register like happens, which is like, don't show this writing to anyone. But Amal, having written it and being the man of that particular time, which is the validation is that this is going to be published in either Lotus or Philanthrop. Yeah. And he goes on and publishes it in the world. And the moment Charulata reads it, that is the first time she feels, what is the word? Betrayal?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. And but also the first time she feels love.
Yeah. She
realizes,
that's when the storm, which was outside, has now come within Charulata.
It's a metaphor.
Yes.
It's all a metaphor.
So she's taken, and like it is hitting her also. Why is it bothering her so much? Like when she closes the door and like she cries and all that. There is a portrait of Lady on Fire reference also over there. Which is, you know, when Amal chooses to publish the article, is he making the poet's choice or a lover's choice? You know, the lover's choice is to keep it between the two of them. The poet's choice is to say it to the world.
It's the reason it's such a big betrayal is because it's like, oh, I thought this was for us. You were, this whole time, you were using it as art.
Yeah.
You were using it as, oh, I'm going to use this moment with us to create something beautiful instead of this is the beautiful thing.
Yes.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. In Rockstar also there is this moment, no, when he comes towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
He says like, Khatana bhai, he's so desperately holding him. Khatana bhai, kuch bhi kar lo, mera dil nahi tootna chahiye. I don't want the art and all that.
Yeah.
Which is coming to the same, like, you know, how art and love kind of are similar to each other and like kind of mix boundaries. There's a lot of submerging of boundaries between the two things, which happens in the case of Charulata as well.
দেখেছি হৃদি মাঝারে তোমায় দেখেছি হৃদি মাঝারে ওগো বিদেশিনী
At one point, Bhupati tells Charulata, no, loneliness is not something that one should get used to. And you see the plot moving forward because of the loneliness of Charulata. Like, you know, the brother and sister-in-law coming over there. And then Amal's entry also, which is like the inciting incident in the film, which he comes with the storm. But then there is this also the angle of the emotional and physical intimacy missing from Charulata's life. And how Amal kind of brings that to the surface, right? And how their love unfolds. So do you have anything on that?
I think, so I've always questioned, like, why is Charulata into Amal? Like, what is it about him specifically that's like, and it's such a basic, bare minimum level where he just asks her questions.
Yeah.
And he cares about what she says. Yeah. I'm like, bas itne hi mein usko pyar ho gaya. Like, this is how bad the level in her life is that no one's listening to her.
Yeah.
Including Manda, including the brother and Bhupati. None of them like really pay attention to her.
Yeah.
Or listen to what she has to say about anything.
Yeah.
He, for the first time, he's like asking, how would you write?
Yeah.
If you had to write about something, you know, and there's an implication that they have conversations about her village and, you know, she's like, oh, he's like, write about your village and the religious fairs and all that. So he knows all of that.
Yeah.
Which means that there was even prior some conversation between them.
Yeah.
So I think it was, this is the bare minimum. She gets some this much she gets and she's like, this is pyar, I think.
Yeah. I don't think so. It's a bare minimum. I think it is the prerequisite of like, you know, that you fall for the one who listens to you and like sees you and like, you know, we have talked about the idea of affirming, someone affirms your actions and all that. And he does pretty much that in her life, right? Like, in fact, when I was thinking of this movie from the feminist lens, right? And we talk so much about the feminist rage that, you know, and then what we should do about it and all that. And this, in the Ami Chini Go Chini, the song, there's this line, Ami Akashe Patiya Kan Shonechi Tumari Gan. Like, you know,
you're going to get butchered for this, you know. I'm not saying any of the lines.
So the thing with that is like, I'm going to press my ears to something as all encompassing as a sky. Because, you know, your problems are that big and that wide and I'm going to try to listen to it. And I think, so in that sense, that listening bit is, it's not just the bare minimum, it is something which is very basic, like all humans long for. And which was so missing from Charulata's life. And then the moment she gets offered that, it also, we have talked about this idea of love being, which brings us closer to ourselves. And then the first time, you know, after she comes to terms with that, storm comes within her when she feels the betrayal of him choosing to write in that, publish the thing which they thought would keep between themselves. He's putting it out in the magazine. Her first action immediately after that is to write her own stuff.
Yeah.
So that she also wants to prove it to, like, it's not a big deal.
She's like,
anybody
koi
can
bhi
do
kar
it.
sakta hai. Even I can do it. Where accidentally, actually what happens is they realize, oh, she's very good.
Yeah.
So, which is why she never understood why he felt the need to publish it.
Yeah.
Because she's like, even I can write this.
Yeah. And the funny thing over there is like when this Amal is having a conversation with Vanda and he's telling her about the two publications, Lotus and Philanthrop, right? And he's saying, you know, Lotus will accept me, Philanthrop do not accept new writers. She gets published in the better one. Like Philanthrop, which does not accept new writers and all that.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. And then she immediately goes to her and like, you know, smashes like on the head. It's like love manifesting as anger, like, you know, in the form ki she doesn't know at that point of time, you know, that it is in your body and you don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have language for it. So it is like she's almost trying to prove it to her, like, look, I have also like accomplished this. This is no big deal for me.
She does this great thing. So like what happens is when his thing gets published, right? So he goes with like kulfi or something to her.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, hey, my thing got published.
Yeah.
And he lords it over a little bit. He's like, shouldn't you respect me because I've got this published? Then before that, he steps out and throws away the kulfi also.
Yeah.
So then she comes when her thing gets published. She goes to the room. She smacks him on the head with it. Then she shows him the pan and then flings it out the door.
Yeah, because Manda has made it.
She's like, oh, you can do that to me, kya? Okay, and I'll throw the pan.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like childish, but that's her way of expressing love.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's like, you think she does exactly what he did.
Yeah.
And it took her less time almost. So it was like, I can do this.
Yeah. It is almost like, she's falling in love and language is losing her. Like, she's losing language. And then the thing she has is like to do her actions. Like she loves making stuff for people. First thing she'll do is like, it's almost like, you were telling me the other day that how even Manda is kind of be charmed by Amal.
Yeah, why is she into him? This is what it's like sort of in the background.
Yeah.
Because Manda and the brother like fuck over Charulata.
Yeah.
And the husband.
Yeah.
But like at some point Manda also likes Amal.
Yeah.
This is what I'm like, how did that start? Why did it happen? Is it just the same thing? Like two absent-minded husbands neglecting their wives and this man with just questions and song and talk about like women, like he's actually asking them. So they just fall in love with him.
It's a reflection of the disposition of women in that time. So like in the way you look at Manda also, like kind of falling for. In fact, I was thinking, what happens when Amal goes and gets married? Does his wife also suffer the same plight as Charulata and Manda? Because then he is not the free man in that. Like he's the husband, right? He's then
it's like a forbidden thing.
Yeah. So I was thinking like it is almost that because Amal during that time he's not accountable for the house and he's like going by his way and all that. Like he's having that free time to be with these women, see them, hear them out and all of that. So that is naturally following to them. Like in Charulata's context, it becomes very beautiful because her possessiveness comes through and through. Like she's like, no, you will not make pan for her. It is my house. I am the Thakurani of this house. You are not going to make pan for him. I'm like and the language of cinema marries so beautifully that the moment she takes that pan box, I see that pan box was heart shaped. With the big kind of container also in it in a heart shaped fashion and all that. And it just becomes how Charulata's love language is making stuff for people, and then the pan becomes the whole thing in that.
But this I'm thinking like, if he was the husband, if like Amal was the husband, this is like messing with my head.
Yeah.
Because then you think he just is a dick again. Like the cycle never stops.
Yeah.
It's not that he's this loving person. He's this loving person because as soon as there's like an expectation.
Yeah.
Ki we're in a relationship together, so you have to bring something, then he'll also be negligent. He just won't be there for
The first thing which we talked about in our first episode was people don't exist in a vacuum. They're also the byproduct of the systems that they are in. So like, so Bhupati is a byproduct of the system. He's almost yes, humans like in the Apne Bana Di Jodi episode also we talked about like your Bobby Khosla getting the iconic line, koi insan bhagwan nahi hota. इंसान होता है, प्यार का भूखा होता है. But all human beings long for connections. But sometimes the systems that we subscribe to, they almost bring in the alienation, like the distance. The distance between Bhupati and Charulata is because of the systems that they have both subscribed to. Bhupati is like, I'm going to be this kind of a man and this is what. And in doing that, in his virtuosity, like he's not an out negative character where like he's having fallacy of like, bad traits. He's doing the virtuous things. He's trying to be political. He's trying to challenge the establishment despite the cost of sedition.
But see, like even when he finds out that Charulata published this thing and she didn't tell him.
Yeah.
Normally, he'd just be happy for her.
Yeah.
But he talks about how he was hurt because perception.
Yeah.
He was like, I found out from other people, so I was hurt. He doesn't even congratulate her on the thing getting published. Yeah. So I was like, you don't care about... He wants her to be a writer. He wants all of that to come out. Great. But if it comes at the expense of his image, then he doesn't want it. He's like, nahi, fir tum mat karo.
Yeah.
Then, my paper is more important.
Yeah.
And even at the end... When he's like, I'll give up the paper, I'll spend time with you.
Yeah.
The first time there's a chance he can get the paper back, he leaves the house.
Yeah, it's like the whole 180-degree circle, 360-degree circle coming back to its place. Like when he's like, they almost get that moment of being together when they're at the beach.
Yeah.
Bhupati and Charulata. But the moment she says, we can do this partnership, then for him that partnership is blossoming. And if you see in that scene, Charulata talks about the three people in the running the paper.
Yeah.
Right? And he presumes the other person to be Nishikanta, like who is his other friend,
rather
than Amal, which Charulata is thinking about. at that particular point of time. So yeah, it comes across.
I didn't
beautifully
realize she was
different.
thinking of Amal.
Yeah, she was.
I didn't think about that.
Because he's proofreading and editing the articles, right? Which he's going out and all that. So it's the family coming to bring the paper out and all that. And
but it's also like he's not a man the way that Nishikant is a man.
Nishikant is going for it. So it's Charulata's story coming back. And like I was also thinking about, what did Charulata write about in the thing which she wrote? Like, when Amal describes her writing, he describes your writing is so sahaj, so sachchanda, like so.
But like, okay. So with the writing, first she has a heading, right? First she writes Cuckoo's song.
Cuckoo's Lament.
Then she scratches out Cuckoo's Lament.
Yeah.
Then she cuts that out completely and writes My Village.
Yeah.
So what did she want to write?
I think this happens with all writers because, if you see the progression of that, what happens is she starts writing, then she goes through multiple edits and then she's in the garden where she's written The Village. So what happens is this is just me being a little bit indulgent, but the first few drafts which you write are too personal. Right, and too much bear out there, and you're like, no, मेरे को ऐसे नहीं बोलना है. Like, I might use a metaphor or like hide behind all these walls. Thereby, let me write about my village, and through that, I can say what I want to say and all that. So it's almost like going for the packaging, and like as she writes about the village is what I feel. Because the Cuckoo's Lament is so personal to her, right?
Because then she would maybe reveal her crush.
Yeah.
Because it feels like that's what she's going to write about.
Because she's reflecting, and then it will be read by everyone, and then people who are close to you, they understand that they understand what the Cuckoo's Lament means and all of that.
Yeah.
So there's almost that idea of like expressing yourself too much, where you'll be seen for who you are and like all of that, and then you're suddenly like, oh, like do I need to take a step back from this and like bring in some other analogy. Like that's why people write Star Wars and all that, right? Which are ultimately about the writer going through something. Like the Alice in Wonderland, like it was so, when I read about it, it was so sort of disturbing of how the writer wrote it and all that. People can go and explore. We'll not get into that. But yeah, there's so much of self-reflection which happens through this greater world building and storytelling and all that. And I think in Charulata's case, maybe that happened. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's also like, I'll write what I know. Like, I'll write about my life. They tell writers this also, like, when you write something, write about yourself.
The most personal is the most universal.
Then you'll kind of, when you evolve as a writer, you'll be able to like express the other things better.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even what I enjoyed about it, like this is a film that came out in 1964.
Yeah.
Right? And I've seen films in like the early 2000s that felt less, they gave women less agency.
Yeah.
I have seen films like, I don't want to like, Hum Saath Saath Hain, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Where like their opinion didn't matter. It just felt like, you welcome to the machine.
Yeah.
There's literally a song which welcomes them in and they don't have any thought of their own.
Yeah.
And in 1964, Satyajit Ray is writing a film about a woman that it's very much about her feeling and how she's feeling towards literally her cousin.
Yeah.
Like that's what's, and I like that she didn't really have that much guilt over it.
Yeah.
She had the initial, but when she realizes the husband's found out, like he writes the letter to her saying, hey, I'm not coming. I've gone for some work. I don't want to be a burden. All of that. She cries. The husband hears it.
Yeah.
She doesn't have guilt that he heard it. She just has like, okay, now accept me or love me for who I am. That in 1964 is insane.
Yeah. That is why Charulata is loved so much also, like, by so many people. Because that character is so bold and has so much agency.
Yeah.
You don't see any outside force sort of making her feel or coming in her way, all of that, right? She's claiming her choices in many ways that she's doing with her brother-in-law. Like, as you rightly pointed out, there is no guilt with her. Like, oh, this is, will not be accepted by the society, or like, what others are thinking about it. She's not about all of that. Like, even when the final act is happening, right? And when Amal has to go away, or it's like, Bhupati has found out about them and Amal is going to meet downstairs. She's telling him, like, she's affirming her choices to him. Like, no matter what happens, you don't go away.
She knows.
Yeah.
This is my thing about how I feel like Charulata almost exists knowing that the script about her is being written.
Yeah.
Like she's almost like, I know that this is a movie.
Yeah.
And I know that at this point where the weather is kind of gloomy and the clock is, dinging, all of that, I know that you will leave now because that's where this goes. So she tells him, whatever happens, don't leave. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm just going to meet my brother.
Yeah.
She's like, don't leave. Don't leave.
Yeah.
She knows the next step he's going to be gone. She doesn't even know what happened to the paper.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like it's completely that the paper thing coincides so beautifully with what is happening with Amal. Because for Bhupati, when Bhupati is narrating his experiences, he's talking about like how his brother-in-law has cheated him. And like, he's talking about, I can pay my dues and all that. But what about a human's relationship with a human? And Amal is hearing all of that from his perspective.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful, like, beautiful moment.
You didn't even think about
storytelling.
Charulata. This is what I don't like.
Yeah.
This is the shit I don't like.
Yeah. But I
like-
think while going in the, I was thinking about that point of whether he thought about Charulata or not. But while going, that letter he writes, he's obviously acting out of duty when he's going away, because he's thinking of his brother and like what it will save his marriage and all that. And that's why he needs to go away. But in the end, he's writing that PS note, right? Like Charulata should keep on writing.
Yeah.
So I felt
But
like
he
there
doesn't
was,
say like, yo, by the way, bro, I think you're a shit husband.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you there for your wife? There's
Yeah.
nothing like that. It's just, his act starts off as a duty.
Yeah.
Then, because that whole like teaching how to write, that's
Yeah.
a duty. He leaves it also because of duty.
Yeah.
So I feel like I said the whole duty calls.
Yeah,
must
yeah.
answer.
I guess that sort of assertiveness is very harsh to expect out of 1860s India. Like
Yeah.
where you can tell someone, hey, you are a green flag, you're gaslighting
I just
me.
wanted to be like, hey,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
a dick, dude. Just
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to your wife. God
I
damn.
don't-
She's in love with me. I'm her cousin.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know how insane that is?
I think even our parents' generation did not have that kind of assertiveness, which it's a progressive nature of like
No, I'm saying it
conversation
right
and all
now. I
that.
also
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
that kind of assertiveness.
Yeah, but like still we are aware of the terms which like the next generation can take on and all that. Like I was thinking in the context of Amal, why he can't say that to his brother, because that thought is also not coming to his mind. It's immediately for him that he has to act from a point of, oh, this is what my brother is now in this particular position. My staying here will ruin your situation more. So the first thing I should do is I should leave and get out from here and all that. So yeah, that does. But yeah, you are right about it. Like nobody cares for what Charulata will feel, or what will happen to her, or how will her life, can she move on from this and all that. So
Yeah.
that is not being taken into account. It is more about.
It's also that thing like when he speaks about how like when no one in the universe, like no one in this world looks back or reflects or is nostalgic.
Yeah.
That is inherently a human thing.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, oh, that's Charulata. This is always going to be a time that she remembers.
Yeah.
And she's going to look back at this.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing about how, yeah, this ended,
Yeah.
but it is a very special time for her for many reasons. She finally found her voice.
Yeah.
And so in a way, he was talking about her.
Yeah. Is that the better thing? Like she found her voice, right? Like she found is that what love is supposed to do in our lives?
This is a Ranbir Kapoor movie. This is that shit of like, oh, art, I guess you fell in love, but like, look, the music was pretty good, right? Like,
There is-
it's the same thing. Like, I think Imtiaz Ali also spoke about it. He said, the music is supposed to, I think Rahul Desai actually, in his review of Rockstar,
Yeah.
he said like, oh, it's like the music, if you look at Ranbir's face, there's no expression on his face. The music's just flowing out of him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Charulata, right? Like the writing is just flowing out of her. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
not the main thing. It's a side effect
Yeah.
of everything that she's feeling.
It's a byproduct of the love that she has felt
So
and all
this
that.
This is that shit only.
So let's talk about what happens to Charulata at the end and then after this movie. Like I guess that is one of the things that drives me about this
Do you want to
podcast.
go to the darker version of
Like
what
in
could
terms
happen?
of what happens to the character after the movie ends or the story ends and all that. So like the ending of this film. So there are two parallels.
Yeah.
Like when Tagore wrote the story, right? He wrote that Bhupati, who when he learns about Charulata, he abandons her. He moves away and he leaves her to her grief.
Huh.
Right? And Ray brought him back, brought Bhupati back, and he's standing at the doorstep of her house, right?
Ah.
And there is like she's telling him, come in. She also knows, he also knows that the look says it all, the weight of the moment, the pregnant pause says it all. But she tells him, come in. She takes her hand towards him and he brings her hand closer, and then their hands almost touch, but there is certain gap. While doing that, the servant Braja, who is bringing a light inside the room of Charulata, and that is where the frame freezes. So the question which I read in one of the critical reviews was, did Braja then manage to take the light inside Charulata's room? Because what
It's stuck
happened?
there.
Yeah, because Ray leaves it up to your interpretation. So what do you think of that?
I mean, personal preference.
Yeah.
Like, don't be with him, man. Seems
Okay.
like, but my personal thing is I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't get the Bhupati thing. But I think what Ray does is he shows him with a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
So why Ray has changed this ending is because he's like, oh, the husband realized it's on him only.
Yeah.
What affects him is not that she was with she had feelings for Amol.
Yeah.
What affects him that like I have not given her love.
Yeah.
So she's felt like this.
Yeah.
And none of this is said, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think Ray brings that empathy.
Yeah.
So I think I'm sure they figure it out. And then every once in a while, Amol shows up and they sing songs together. That's what I think.
So when I was thinking about it, I was like, the love between Charulata and Amal was more of a passionate love, right? Which brings to the furor,
that
brings you to the
very
feelings,
sexual hug.
which does not,
Yeah.
which is about like, you have all these pent up emotions in your life, regardless of this person. But when you come in touch with this person and this equation, it brings all of that to the surface. And then you are left with the choice to either to work with it or like kind of, let it affecting you and like let it keep making you very pent up and all that. So with Charulata, that is what Amal's role or like that the love played in her life. That I feel in the context of the end, what happens is both Bhupati and Charulata, because they have to spend a lifetime together, arrive at a more accepted and grounded thing of it. Like Bhupati, like you said, is aware about how all of this was because of him also. But at the same time, so Charulata also has like, okay, she went there, right? She crossed that boundary, which she was not supposed to. So both have had their share of flaws, and now when they are kind of like joining hands, like or kind of holding each other's hand, I feel it is a case of that grounded accepting, which comes like
I also think I don't think he starts his paper up again.
Yeah,
that's my take.
Sautan of the
he doesn't do that Sautan thing where he's like, oh, she's the biggest rival, is the paper, whatever.
Yeah,
but I don't think he does it.
Yeah,
because I think he realizes that okay, I need to spend time with my wife. Maybe
because
this is a good sign.
The handkerchief, which is a motive towards the film, like the film starts on it,
and
right?
He's looking at it at the
then
end.
the beginning portion, she brings it to him where he does not even acknowledge it, right? But towards the end, when he's in the Tonga, like going, like he's looking at it, and that is a remembrance of what their love was, or like what it was that is worth cherishing and holding on to between the two of them. And I think that is why Ray wrote it like that, and like he goes back and there is this freeze frame, which is left to the audience interpretation, but I think it is very
their hands were extending.
It's very beautiful. And like the idea of the broken nest, which the title of the Tagore story comes, I feel it is a very affirming thing, that the nest has to get broken before it is pieced together again, the Kintsukurai.
What nests are you looking at?
Oh man, like
a good idea.
In the sense,
I agree.
Your ruptures have to come. Like in the sense, you for you to move forward progressively and all of that, you have to welcome the idea of like kind of going there, like kind of understanding the issues and all that. Obviously, in their case, we talked about how this movie is so similar to In Their Mood for Love also, in the sense that what happens there is that the two people who think they are going to be together, right? But they know they cannot be, and thereby for the society they kind of stay away from each other. But it is that trauma gets back to both of them, like the expectation of like in the case of Charulata, to simplify it further, she has this issues with loneliness, absence of intimacy, and like loss of connection in her life, right? There's this void which is there, which Amal fills in, which, as you're rightly talking about, what is exceptional about Amal? It could have been anyone in that point of time and place and all that, right? That void is there. If she addresses that void, if she is more assertive, or if we have to in today's time, in 2023, take something from 1964 movie, which was based on a short story which was written 100 years before that, right? What do we take away from it? We take away that the assertiveness of that we have to address our issues at some point of time. If we don't, they come up in this manner. And then we have to go through the broken nest in order to move forward from that. So I
love that. Like this is like, I don't know what, 200 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, love each other.
Yeah.
It's like 200 years ago, they were still like writing this shit. They were like, look, he didn't love me.
The opening note which we began on, like the legends that have gone into making this movie, it's a Rabindranath Tagore story. Satyajit Ray made, Soumitra Chatterjee in it, Madhabi Mukherjee in it. So yeah, man. Awesome. I think that's that.
That's it.
Is there anything else that you would like to say before we end it?
I was just going to ask you if Charulata is an influencer, what kind of influencer would she be? What kind of content is she putting out there? Besides the vlogs, do you think she's following trends? What's happening? Because we did touch upon this. I just want to know. They can let us know. If they're listening over there. If you're listening, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. So please do that.
Which contemporary or like which other characters do remind you about Charulata? Is there anything like that?
Oh, like I don't know. Usually I'm thinking of like Bhansali movies. like a lot of Bhansali movie women. Nah, but they don't have that much agency. So I don't like. They're usually just perfect, and Charulata is like a fully formed human.
That's what I was saying. Have we seen a person with so much agency, so much boldness?
Do you think it's like I don't want to do this whole like because also Bengali, but Piku? I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like a little bit that anger, like I was, fuck you, how dare you do this to me? And then having someone that's an older person in your life who you have to look after, who looks at you for validation. Then a person comes in from the outside, upsets the status quo, makes you fall in love.
The hot priest.
Yeah, the hot priest, Fleabag.
Yeah.
Charulata is also Fleabag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are fair.
Yeah.
Those are fair.
All right, man. I think that's it. That's our episode.